cricopharyngeus, it is 25 centimeter in length, and if I start with the incisor, it is 40 centimeter. And the important thing, you must know that it has 4 constructions. I am repeating it because it is very, very important for anybody, for an anatomist, for a surgeon, for an endoscopist. So starting at the cricopharyngeal junction, there is a one construction, then where aortic arch crosses, that is 9 inches below, then where there is a left bronchus crosses, that is 11 inches, and when it pierces the diaphragm and become the abdominal esophagus, that is 15 inches. These 4 constructions are very important for an endoscopist to know, to prevent the iatrogenic perforation, which we have already read, that is the Borowiecki syndrome. Now histologically, it has mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and the fibrous layer. Now what is missing over here is the serosa. And why serosa is important? Because serosa is a big protection for spread of the tumors, and see, in esophagus there is no serosal layer. Now we divided the esophagus into the 4 portions for the sake of the diseases related or malignancies related with those parts. That is the cervical. It starts from the cricoid cartilage to the thoracic inlet, then upper thoracic inlet to tracheal bifurcation, then mid thoracic from tracheal bifurcation to just above the gastroesophageal junction, and then lower thoracic, that is the gastroesophageal junction, that is the abdominal esophagus. So these are the 4 parts of the esophagus, and these are important because lymphatic drainage is also according to that. So it has a rich mucosal and submucosal lymphatic system. The submucosal lymphatics run for the long distance proximally and distally, and that's why for the surgery you have to take margins at least 5 centimeters above and the 5 centimeters below the tumor. The submucous plexus drains into the regional lymph nodes, that is in the cervical, mediastinal, paraesophageal, left gastric, and celiac axis. So you see, it may involve the neck lymph nodes, it may involve the mediastinal lymph node, or it may involve the abdominal lymph nodes. So esophageal cancer, if we go to the epidemiology, it is the 7th leading cause of the cancer death, accounts for 1% of all malignancy and 6% of all GI malignancy. It is most common in the China, but I can see now so many cases in our part of the world, that is in the Pakistan, maybe because of the tobacco, gutka, and so on. The incidence rises steadily with the age, reaching a peak in the 6th to 7th decade of life, and more common in the females. Now African and American males and white males, there is a big difference, that is 5:1 ratio. Now worldwide, squamous cell carcinoma is responsible for most of the cases. Adenocarcinoma now accounts for over 50% of esophageal cancer in the USA. Now this is very important change you have to realize, and this is because of the GERD, which we have already read, and Barrett's esophagus, which is the pre-malignant condition, and the obesity. So obesity, Barrett's esophagus, and GERD causing more rise in the adenocarcinoma as comparative to the squamous cell carcinoma. Squamous cell carcinoma usually occurs in middle third of the esophagus. Adenocarcinoma is the most common in the lower third of the esophagus because of the Barrett's esophagus, and accounting for over 65% of the cases. Now what are the risk factors? As always, smoking and alcohol are in the top. That's why we always say smoking is a very bad habit and you have to quit that habit. Then the dietary factors, nitroso compounds. What do you mean by nitroso compounds? Means barbecue foods. Barbecue foods have nitroso compounds, pickled vegetables and other food products, toxin producing fungi, betel nut chewing, ingestion of very hard food and beverages like tea may be the risk factors for development of the squamous cell carcinoma, but I don't agree 100% with the hot beverages. Genetic abnormalities, P53 mutation, loss of 3p and 9q allele, and so on. But you have to just remember that there are certain genetic abnormalities which may cause more chances of C. esophagus. Underlying esophageal diseases, we have already read through achalasia, caustic strictures, and tylosis. Now, the risk factors of adenocarcinoma, that is Barrett's esophagus, related with GERD and hiatus hernia, obesity, smoking, increasing esophageal acid exposure such as Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Repeatedly I am saying Barrett's esophagus because it is the preventable cause of the malignancy. Now in this X-ray you can see there is a difference between the look of the normal esophageal mucosa and the Barrett's esophagus. So it's a metaplasia of the esophageal epithelial lining. The squamous epithelium is replaced by columnar epithelium with 0.5% annual rate of neoplastic transformation. That's why we say it as a pre-malignant condition, and you see in BCQ it comes. Now what is the pattern of a spread? As I already told you, there is no serosal covering, so direct invasion of the contagious structures is very common in esophageal cancers, commonly spread by the lymphatics 70%, and lymph node involvement increases with T stage. Now for every cancer, as I already told you, you have to remember TNM. T stands for the tumor, N stands for the lymph nodes, and M stands for the distant metastasis. So in T1 means 0 to 2 centimeter, T2 2 to 5 centimeter, and so on. So whenever there is an increase in the T stage, there is an increase in the N stage also. 25 to 30% hematogenesis metastasis at the time of presentation. Most common sites of metastasis, if it is hematogenous, then it is lung, liver, pleura, bone, kidney and adrenal gland. Now median survival with distant metastasis is only 6 to 12 months. So जब आप कहते हैं ना मरीज को कि जी अब आपकी ज़िंदगी के बाकी 6 महीने रह गए, so this is when you get the distant metastasis. So clinical feature commonly associated with symptoms of dysphagia, weight loss, pain, anorexia and vomiting. As I already told you, in esophageal issues, history is very, very important because esophagus is a non-palpable organ. You cannot palpate it. So symptoms of dysphagia, weight loss are very, very important. Symptoms often start 3 to 4 months before diagnosis. Dysphagia is more than 90% of the patients. Odonophagia, that is when patient is trying to swallow, there is a pain, that is known as odynophagia. Weight loss, more than 5% of the total body weight. Now you see in this case, weight loss is because of 2 reasons. One, patient is unable to take food. Second, malignancy itself is using the food. Patient may have cachexia, malnutrition, dehydration, anemia and aspiration pneumonia. Why aspiration pneumonia? Because of the esophageal issues, patient may develop fistulous formation with the trachea or bronchus, or because of the stasis of the food in the esophagus proximal to the structure. When patient cough, patient may aspirate those that material into the lung, and patient may develop with the distant metastasis. Now invasion of the nearby structures. What are the common nearby structures? Patient may present with the hoarseness of the voice because of the recurrent laryngeal nerve involvement. Because of the trachea, patient may develop stridor, choking and cyanosis. And when sometimes in late stages it may perforate into the pleural cavity, and patient develop the empyema chest, empyema thoracis. Now this is a very difficult slide, but very easy if you understand it. When you are unable to assess the primary tumor, it is TX, and when you are not seeing primary tumor by all the investigation, it is T0. When it is only histologically, there is a dysplasia, high grade dysplasia, it is carcinoma in situ, TIS. And when the tumor is only crossing the lamina propria and muscularis mucosa, it is T1. Submucosa, T1b, invasion of muscularis propria, T2, and so on. You can read this slide. Lymph nodes, when there is no regional lymph nodes, N0, when 1 to 2 and so on, N1, N2, N3. When there is no distant metastasis, M0, and when there is a distant metastasis, it is M1. So on the basis of this TNM classification, we can stage the tumor. So stages is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then stage 4. Now every stage is having stage A and stage B. You can go through this graph, but stage 4 means any T, any N, but it is having distant metastasis. For example, there is a T1, N1, but patient is having tumor in the lung, so it is stage 4. So whenever there is a distant metastasis, it is stage 4 disease. Now, how you diagnose the esophageal cancer? You have to take the detailed history and then physical examination. Now, dysphagia, odynophagia, hoarseness, weight loss, use of tobacco, nitrosamines, patient is very fond of taking barbecue food, history of GERD, this is the history. Now in examination, as I said, less chances of getting any positive thing, except you may have cervical lymph or supraclavicular lymphadenopathy. Then how you will confirm your diagnosis? It is only your mind which suggests that this patient is having dysphagia. You have to go through certain investigation to find out the cause. The first thing is the upper GI endoscopy. So it allows the direct visualization, and at the same time you can take the biopsy for the confirmation of the diagnosis. Now CT scan of the chest and abdomen is very, very important. It is not only for the diagnosis of the disease, but it is also for staging the disease. You can well see the lymph node involvement, you can well see the liver, lung or any visceral metastasis. You can easily diagnose as well as stage the disease, right? Now, endoluminal ultrasound. Nowadays, to see whether this tumor is not only involving the mucosa, submucosa, lamina propria and so on, endoluminal ultrasound has the highest sensitivity and specificity for diagnosing the T, that is T1, T2, T3 and so on. Now PET scan. As you all know that PET scan is the recent investigation to find out any distant metastasis with 100% diagnosis. Why PET scan is important in the carcinoma of the esophagus? Because carcinoma of esophagus has a very high mortality, so it's the most recently proven to be valuable staging tool. Can detect up to 15 to 20% of metastases which are not seen on the CT or endoluminal ultrasound. Barium swallow, in initial days when nothing was available, it was the best tool, and still in some centers it is the best tool because it can delineate the proximal and distal margins as well as total esophageal as well as the length of the stricture. So it is helpful for the correlation with simulation film. Now if somebody is going for the endoscopy and that endoscopist has barium swallow picture in front, he or she can have the roadmap before doing the endoscopy, so that he or she will be careful to prevent the perforation. Bronchoscopy to rule out the fistula formation, and then routine investigation you have to perform in every case. Now what is the treatment of the carcinoma of the esophagus? It is always surgery, radiotherapy and the chemotherapy. Now you as a surgeon has to decide whether this patient need upfront surgery or this patient need chemo radiation followed by surgery. But this is only in those cases which are resectable. So in resectable patients you can think of the surgery and the chemo radiotherapy, but in case of those cancers which are non-resectable, you have to go for the palliative surgery. So this is again a big chart. You can go through this chart. So first you have to diagnose the cancer, then you have to stage the cancer, and then according to the stage, if it is stage T1 or it means early stage or late stage. So in early stage cancers, you can offer patients surgery upfront followed by chemoradiotherapy after biopsy, and in stage 2 to stage 2 and stage 3 you can have neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by the surgery, but in stage 4 it is only the palliative treatment, that is chemotherapy or radiotherapy, just for the purpose of the supportive care you can give to the patient. Otherwise you have to put stents to or do the feeding gastrostomy or feeding jejunostomy. So the same which I told, I can well say that management depend upon the site of the disease, extent of the disease involvement, comorbid conditions of the patient, and of course patient's preference, what patient really want. If you advise patient chemotherapy but patient is not willing for the chemotherapy, you cannot force the patient. So prerequisites for the surgery, disease should be 5 cm beyond the cricopharyngeus. Why? As I told you, the lymphatic spread, you have to take 5 cm free margin proximally as well as distally. So surgery indications, lower 1/3 of the esophageal disease involving gastroesophageal junction, tumor size less than 5 cm, otherwise palliative surgery is indicated. Local failure rate around 19 to 57% when used alone. So it means you have to say to the patient that surgery is not the only modality. You have to go through chemo and the radiotherapy. So surgical morbidity and morbidity related to the experience of the surgeon. Now what are the different types of surgery? You as a final year student may not go into the detail of these surgeries, but you must know the names and something related with those surgeries. That is right thoracotomy, it is the Ivor-Lewis operation. So you must remember the name Ivor-Lewis operation. It is a 2-stage operation. You have to open the abdomen and you have to open the chest from the right side. So this is the Ivor-Lewis operation. And then left thoracotomy. Left thoracotomy is appropriate for lower third of the esophagus and gastric cardia, and you have to make the anastomosis in the mid-thoracic region. Transhiatal esophagectomy, it is almost obsolete nowadays, but in transhiatal esophagectomy you have to do the blind dissection from the abdominal cavity, and then you pull out the esophagus in the neck and do the anastomosis in the neck. So it's a 2-stage. You have to do the cervical surgery and you have to do the abdominal surgery. Chemotherapy, no data proving that chemotherapy alone provides improved survival or palliation. Partial response, not long-term remission is the rule. Now indication, what are the indications of chemotherapy? It is most of the time used in combination with radiation for locally advanced cancer, used as a single treatment modality in stage 4, that is palliative treatment, and the most common use is the combination chemotherapy has been used pre-operatively in a neoadjuvant setting. When you are giving chemotherapy before surgery, it is known as neoadjuvant. In esophageal carcinoma, in the hopes of controlling occult metastatic disease and improving the resectability rate. Now this is not very important slide for you. This is the protocol of giving chemotherapy, and that must be for the oncologist to remember. So if we think about and talk about the palliative treatment, it should be you first you have to decide it should be very simple and effective. So one type is the intubation, then endoscopic laser treatment, and then brachytherapy. Now intubation, there are different types of tubes available. Nowadays the commonest and good tubes are the expanding metallic stents. These are the self-expanding metallic stents which you have to put over there and then they will expand inside. Endoscopic laser therapy based on the thermal tumor destruction. You have to destroy the tumor by laser therapy so that there will be a space for deglutition and for taking the food down. Brachytherapy is basically the intraluminal radiation. You have to put some material in the lumen which continuously emit the radiation waves to destroy the tumor. So this is a slide you go through, but it's not very important slide to remember. It is simply, as I told, in stage 4 it is always palliative treatment, and in stage 1 and 3 one can go for the surgery as well as chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So I can conclude that esophageal cancer is the 7th leading cause of the cancer death. Adenocarcinoma now accounts for over 50% of esophageal cancers in the USA due to association with GERD and obesity. Dysphagia and weight loss are the 2 most common presentations in patients with esophageal cancer. Endoluminal ultrasound is now necessary to accompany a complete workup for proper staging and diagnosis of the esophageal cancer. Surgery is the standard care for early stage esophageal cancer. Remember, it is only for the early stage esophageal cancer, and unluckily in our part of the world, when we receive the patients, they are usually late stage or advanced cancers. Preoperative chemotherapy and radiation, that is the neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy, is the standard operation for locally advanced esophageal cancers in surgically eligible patients. So we can call it as a sandwich therapy also. It means, what is sandwich therapy? We have to give chemotherapy before operation, then we do the operation, and then again we do the chemoradiotherapy. So it is actually known as the sandwich therapy. Thank you very much.